Good evening, everyone. This is Jayashree Sharma. Welcome to the third session of ICC Crack the Wellness Code's Behavioral Health Forum this evening, focusing on factors impacting mental wellness of women. Again, I'm Jayashree Sharma. I'm the event coordinator for CWC and Women Wellness Champion, advocate CWC Wellness Music. CWC is led by its three co-founders, Dr. Pankaj, uh, Naren Bakshi, and Som Chatterjee. They had started CWC to offer a platform to crack the mind-body wellness code of the community in San Francisco Bay Area. From being a program of ICC, I hope all of you know, ICC is India Community Center. It's the largest community center in Northern America of South Asians. It has expanded swiftly over the past 3 years to go global with participants from over 20 plus nations. It's a wellness ecosystem and is made up of 81 doctors, 200 plus volunteers, health heroes, support groups offering resources, wellness practices, tools, and network. I remember 3 years ago, I was part of CWC. I had just started with a mega event, and I know between then and now, we have grown exponentially. With 135 plus events by now, there's a huge library of content. This is steadily increasing to match community needs. Do check out crackthewellnesscode.org. It's a comprehensive web platform presenting CWC's wellness ecosystem, events, program, content, along with membership and marketplace. Coming up in a big way, so do connect with us at info@cwcicc.org and become a member. Let us know if you wish to offer any product or services in the CWC online marketplace. Dr. Leena Khanzode to present her perspective and the session outline. The four panelists that we have, I call them as the four passionate women panelists with a capital P. If you notice, all their names start with a P, and that's where these are our powerful, passionate women panelists today. As I said, the panel moderator, Leena Khanzode, is going to uh, conduct the event and moderate it for us. The first panelist, actually, let me just quickly talk about the four women, and we will hear more from them. Paras Malhotra, she's a senior advisor from Microsoft. She's a community leader and wellness champion. She's also an ICC board member with extensive philanthropic work. The second panelist is Preeti Shikhande. She's a tech entrepreneur focusing on behavioral health. The passionate third woman in this panelist is Preet Sabharwal. She's a psychologist and head of programs for South Asians Hume Center. And our fourth panelist, Pushpa Agarwal, she's a wellness advocate and practitioner. All these panelists are going to share with us their rich and diverse experience while telling us how and why mental factors impact women. Now, if you imagine past 16 months, the women force, whether she's a working woman or a homemaker, we have had gone through several challenges and several new challenges during pandemic also. And these challenges, sometimes it was very difficult for all of us to deal with. There were new things that got introduced in the last 16 months. In some cases, some parents had their children come home, and so there probably was some bit of a challenge there on how to deal with the situation. So we were juggling with a lot of these responsibilities and newness in the past 16 months. And also, not necessarily just the pandemic, I would say, there have been other factors which impact the women's mental health. And those are the things that we're going to talk today. So let me now call our moderator, Dr. Leena Khanzode. She's a psychiatrist. She's a MD, board certified psychiatrist, specialized in adult and child and adolescent psychiatry from Stanford Hospital and Clinics. She also runs Tarika Foundation, started by her to help the youth with the health challenges. So, welcome, Leena. I'm very excited that we have this wellness session today with the amazing four panelists, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you for that kind introduction. And I am super excited to be given this opportunity to moderate today's session. You already heard a bit about me, so I'm not going to talk more about me. It's about the four amazing panelists that we are going to talk to today. So I am going to give you a little bit more introduction to all of them shortly. I would like to present my perspective on women's mental health, kind of look at the current statistics and what are some of the factors that affect it as a small presentation in a couple minutes. And then we will do introductions of our panelists and have them join for a rich discussion on women mental health. We are, talking about mental wellness in women. So I wanted to present some current statistics and data about what's the stark reality of how prevalent any kind of mental health issues are in women. So based on NIMH, which stands for National Institute of Mental Health, there is certainly been, a lot of data collection by them. And as of 2019, and I would imagine these numbers have gone up now. So this is as of 2019, you can see there is a higher prevalence of mental health issues in female compared to male. So the difference of 25% versus almost 16.5%. So this is about any mental health illness. Then if we talk about serious mental health illnesses, which can impact most of them for most of their life, again, we see females having more of issues compared to males. You see the difference 6.5% versus 3.9. And then this is not just older women, but also females in their teenage. So for adolescents, also we see a difference here that they have more mental health challenges compared to their male, counterparts. So, what do we see in terms of some psychiatric diagnoses that I see day in and out in my professional work? Anxiety and depression are the most common ones. And we actually definitely I see a lot more female clients. So I think it's the data is kind of certainly true as far as even my anecdotal experience. Women are twice as likely as men to be impacted by what we call as generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. That's the same also for depression. When we say unipolar depression, this is the common garden variety clinical depression. We distinguish it by calling it as unipolar because there are people who have another mental health condition called bipolar disorder, and they may swing between depression and mania or hypomania. And so that depression is qualified as bipolar depression. And in fact, I would imagine even there females are more impacted compared to males. And then, higher incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder. I think we are very much aware of the traumatic experiences women go through their life at multiple levels and at different stages of their life. So that definitely also makes them much more likely to experience PTSD. And then, unfortunately, women are almost 10 times more likely than men to be affected by any kind of eating disorder. So, in fact, during the pandemic, we've seen a rise of this, even in teens, female teens or teen girls, with a lot of them developing anorexia nervosa type of eating disorder symptoms or bulimia nervosa. And sometimes just some symptoms of, some of them, and they're not quite filling the diagnostic criteria, but that's certainly been another thing that we, see much more in females compared to male patients. And then while the incidence of more serious psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia and bipolar tend to be same for men and women, the symptoms that women experience are often differ from, how they present in male. And we do see a little bit of prognosis that varies in females that tends to be a little more on the poorer side or lower side compared to men. So basically, I'm not sharing like any kind of great news, but this is the harsh reality of mental health issues in women that we see. Now, I'm going to touch upon some factors, and obviously we'll talk more about this when I have my questions to our amazing panelists and learn from them how they are managing some of these factors and what other factors I might have missed. I think there are more than the ones I have listed, but we definitely know that female hormones tend to play a big role in mental health of women. stress. I think as women, we play multiple roles. Often, as a working professional and mom and a wife and a granddaughter or a daughter-in-law and whatnot. I mean, there is a lot, and I think culturally, we tend to, have more responsibilities, on us, which does add to the stress. Exposure to violence, trauma, or any kind of abuse, unfortunately, tends to be certainly higher in females. Lack of social support. So some of us are fortunate to have that, but I know many of the clients I work with don't often have that, and that makes it really hard for them to juggle the different roles and responsibilities. And there is something about, this internalized self-stigma that as females, we tend to be really harsh on ourselves, and we are considered to be emotionally strong, or we should be strong. There are a lot of myths and cultural beliefs that often, make us feel like if I'm going to come and talk to me about feeling stressed out or anxious, that's going to be taken as I'm weak. And so that's certainly a big part of what impacts female, patients or women to get mental health help, earlier on or at the right time. And then, minorities, women of color. So we are talking about South Asian women. We have some amazing panelists who are representing that category today. But I think just again, as a professional, I see women from different ethnic backgrounds and minorities across the board tend to have their own challenges as far as maintaining their mental health. And then I put the self-care at the bottom. I think that's the main one. And I'm going to have our panelists talk about that, because I think that can be a huge factor in maintaining good mental health.
Before we begin and introduce our panelists, I just want to add, we have these amazing attendees on this session, and they may wonder what is in it for them today, right? So
Oh,
this is a women's forum, and there has been a lot of interest in people joining in. So CWC, the goal of CWC is to educate, inspire, empower, and impact. And through your slides, you're trying to educate also to show them the stats, how mental health impacts women, and how we can also inspire them and help them. And these panelists are going to give their point of view, plus you as one of the main kind of moderator, as well as the work that you have been doing in the behavioral health, will also help our attendees once we have the Q&A sessions, to give them some tools and techniques on how to deal with some of these situations. So all the attendees that you guys are listening to us, we have a lot of information coming in. The four panelists are going to talk about their point of views, their experiences, which will be a takeaway for all of you. And then once we open it for Q&A, think of it, this is a safe space. You can ask the questions, and then we will address them through the panelists, and also Lena will take some of the questions. So over to you, Lena.
Thanks, Jayashree. Yeah, absolutely. I think the goal is to educate and inspire and help each other. So we are trying to build also a community here. A lot of us will recognize a lot of the challenges some of our panelists are going to talk about, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I go through this too, and we can kind of learn from each other how we maintain that balance. So very quick kind of round of introduction. Our first panelist is Paras Malhotra. She's had 20 years of leadership experience in global marketing and alliances, working for different software companies or major brands in our Silicon Valley: Microsoft, Amazon, and Oracle. And she has an MBA in marketing management from Johns Hopkins University. Besides her amazing professional background, she's a wonderful mother of 3, and she's constantly juggling with family and professional responsibilities. So we'll hear more about how she does that. She's also on the board of India Community Center and passionate about children education and mental well-being. Welcome, Paras. Our second panelist today is Preeti Srikhande. And Preeti, I actually know her a little bit more personally than some of the other wonderful panelists here. And I can absolutely say she's a passionate human being who values all aspects of well-being, not just physical, but also emotional, mental, and intellectual. She has had an interesting career journey. She has master's degree in computer science and statistics and has worked in the tech space for 28 plus years, working for some really big technology companies like Sun, PayPal, and a few more. She served as a vice president, I think, in one of those tech companies as well. And she, was doing so well in this space of corporate world, but something jolted her. And unfortunately, some of you who are familiar with youth mental health issues in our Bay Area, there was a cluster of suicides in Palo Alto in 2009, and that really was a shaking experience for many of us, including me, which also inspired me down the line to form my nonprofit Tarika. But Preeti was also, I think, really disturbed by those events, and she was determined to understand what life challenges can bring to today's youth and resolve and find a solution for the problems they experience. So she initially got certified as a life coach, and then very soon she thought, oh, she could use her background of life coach and technology, and she founded this company called Vivensity, which is doing a great service for middle and high schoolers. So they have an app and a product that helps youth in their social, emotional, and academic development. And she has been taking some good care of herself while managing some of this critical role as a CEO of a company. She practices yoga and does some wonderful activities. So I'll have her share more about that as we discuss. Welcome, Preeti.
Thanks, Lena.
And our third panelist, Preet Sabharwal. So Dr. Preet Sabharwal is a clinical psychologist who received her PsyD at American School of Professional Psychology at Argosy University in Alameda. I am delighted to introduce you today, Preet. I know we've interacted, on the media, social media mostly, but I'm delighted to get this opportunity to talk to you today. So she provides clinical services at Hume Center, and she's been doing this for the past 8 years, and the services are focused on South Asian community. And then she, works with across different age groups, so youth, adults, and families, and helps foster healthy communication and relationships. I can spend the whole session talking about her amazing work and achievements, but another highlight that I want to just mention, because I won't have enough time to really go over her amazing accomplishments, but most recently in October 2019, Preet was recognized by Asian American Psychological Association for her outstanding contributions to Asian American psychology and received the AAPA Early Career Award for distinguished contributions to the service. She is also a proud mother of a vibrant and sassy toddler who keeps her very busy. So we are honored to have you, Preet. I'm sure this was a time you had to carve out to be away from the distractions from your cute toddler. Welcome.
Thank you, Lena.
And then last but not the least, we have a really inspiring, women from a senior citizen age group, which I feel like, the older you get, the more wise you get. So we are going to get some words of wisdom from Pushpa ji. Pushpa ji is a wellness advocate and has taken really good steps to keep her and her community, friends, and other people's wellness even during the pandemic. So we'll learn more about how she did that.
It's been a great pleasure. And also, I think understanding what issues we face as we do the research, we can find out more and more. specifically, I think we were asked to share, what is happening and how our lives changed during the pandemic. And I think the challenge for us was that we were already empty nesters. Our kids had gone off to college or had started working. And then now in this place, it was really hard for them to be living by themselves because they were in smaller apartments or wherever they were. And it felt like we needed company because you couldn't socialize. And so we invited our kids to come home and stay with us. So we had my older son and his girlfriend, who is now his fiance, and my younger son. So 3 of them home. And it's a very different way of dealing with things because you can't just be mom, and sometimes the temptation to become mom and start doing everything, and I had to stop and say, wait a minute, Preeti, now your life has changed and now they've grown kids. So I had to constantly remind myself that it's all right. Okay, who's going to help with lunch now? Who's going to help with dinner? Who's sort of inviting them to participate and be a part was very important. And then not to sort of expect something and set a certain rule, kind of generally just accept. The other thing was also to make sure that we're all taking the time to exercise and relax as well. So things like that, and having some time. And also making time for yourself, because during this time, the mom part of you sort of jumps out and you're trying to do everything. So stealing a few minutes, self-care doesn't have to take hours and hours. You can just take 5 minutes by yourself, sit quietly, do meditation, watch something. So yeah, I think it was quite an interesting challenge, but we learned a lot from it. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more in the Q&A. So I'll, hand it over to someone else to share the next.
Yep. So Paras, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jayashree. I'm so excited to be here and share my experiences, but also learn from the other panelists as well. So for me, during the pandemic, it was about our move, which we had just in a few months before the pandemic hit, cross country with our 3 kids. And it was a very difficult situation because we were constantly thinking, if only if we had known. We wouldn't have done the move. The kids were upset because, they didn't kind of have the time to make new friends. They had to right away go to virtual school. So it was a very challenging situation at home with the kids. And at the same time, my mom was going through cancer treatment on the East Coast. And so we couldn't visit her because of the pandemic as well. So it was stressful because she wanted to see us, she wanted to see the grandkids, but it was really, we wanted to go, but we just thought that was the right decision not to go and visit her, as she was in a very delicate situation. So for us with the kids, it was, working with them and saying, it's okay, it will pass. You do still have opportunity to make new friends. You are in virtual school, so you still get to see them through Zoom. But also I reached out to the community and to our, school to help make introductions for our kids with other kids. And they were, other kids who had already formed a pod where they were actually meeting outside and playing. So our kids were able to be part of that pod and, just meet new people, meet new friends, and really enjoy themselves, because this was a great opportunity for them to be outside. When their friends came over, if they went over to their friends, it was all about, playing outside. At home, I work full time. I'm a working mother. My husband works as well. And for us, it was, how do we teach our children responsibility? And they were at this age, where they were just kind of getting ready. It could do their own things. So we had a discussion with them and said, well, now we have no help, and mom and dad are working, so you have to help with the chores. And, they were very resistant in the beginning. It's like, no, we can't do this. But we had a chat with them, and they all kind of picked what they wanted to do. So it was, just kind of teaching them, yes, you can do it. You can still do your, laundry, which is helpful to mom. I think, Preeti, as you were mentioning, it was even with the younger kids, was all about, helping out, making dinner together, teaching them. So we tried to make this kind of a hard situation into a learning for our children. But for me as well, it was hard because I had no, friends very few friends we knew in the Bay Area. So, reaching out to a couple of my kids' friends and say, well, we can just go for a walk. So it was just, kind of being really proactive and taking and reaching out to the community for to make some new friends and kind of, interacting with the community as well. So with that, I can maybe pass over to Preet.
Thank you, Boris. I want to echo what everybody else said in terms of being really excited to be on this panel today. I think for me, kind of the hardest thing was just starting to do remote work with a toddler at home. So I was very, grateful that I had my parents are here, my in-laws are here. So I've always had childcare, but they're elderly and we were really worried about their health and not knowing, what's safe, what's not. And so we decided not to continue to send my daughter to her grandparents' house for childcare. So now my husband's working, I'm working, and we have a toddler. She was in preschool prior to the pandemic, but we decided to pull her out. But she was also at this delicate space of her, development of where her social emotional intelligence is kind of being built at this age. And so how do we continue to support that at home with just 2 adults? And so we tried the online preschool, which was very interesting, and more power to those teachers that were doing remote learning with such young children. But just to keep some structure for her. But that also meant that we had to be really structured with our work schedules and making sure that, when we had meetings and all of that, and managing and making sure that she was able to log in and, staying with her. She's not old enough to be on remote learning by herself. And just sitting with her, working through all of the lessons and encouraging her. So being the teacher, so wearing different hats was something that, trying to balance that, like wearing the teacher hat, wearing the mom hat, or wearing, the psychologist hat. So a lot of trying to find that balance of not only my roles, but also, when does my day start and when does my day end? And I'm sure a lot of the women on this panel and in the audience can kind of resonate with that is, we would start our day, we would make breakfast, I would go on a meeting, then I throw a load of laundry in and then come back and then start dinner. And so there was just no, like, this is my work time and this is my home time. It kind of was just all meshed together. And I know that now that we've kind of found this new normal, but it did take a long time. And then while I was wearing my psychology hat, I was really struggling with this piece of how can I help others live with this uncertainty and deal with these anxieties when I'm also going through the same thing. This is very unique. Like, we are all have faced some level of trauma with this pandemic. We're all going to have a level of post-traumatic stress disorder as a society, as a community, and as a provider, as a professional. How do I support others when I'm also struggling? So making sure I was taking time out for myself and trying to figure out how do I encourage others? How do I model it for others?
Can you believe, I mean, Preet, you just gave an example of how you had to deal with your kid at home plus work, and you were lucky to have a support system. And sometimes it's kind of surprising that from our side, we feel, oh, doctors are there to help us deal with these problems, but you yourself are also part of that challenge. So it's interesting to know that, and your experience probably also will kind of many of these attendees would also relate to your experience, because I have seen some of my friends going through that, and it is challenging. Working from home, there are no boundaries, which is work time, which is personal time, is just mushed, as you said. And to deal with that has been a challenge. So I'm glad to hear your experience where we can relate to it. So over to Pushpaji.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've been listening all those things, Actually, you might think I'm weird. It did not have any effect on me. It has all the pluses on me. But I know I'm very, very social person. I used to go ICC 4 days a week, go in the morning around 9:30 and would not come back until 6 because I have a 6, because I have a very social group and going to movies and all kind of things. So when I heard that ICC is closed, so I said, oh, we can't go anymore there. That's the first thing came to my mind. But at the same time, the Zoom was I can say my friend, and I can say everything for Zoom. So Zoom is the one, because of Zoom, I don't know, I did not get panic. I didn't feel anything bad or say my friends were calling me. I kind of keep talking and talking to them. I like a counseling. And because I started doing the meditation every Monday to Friday, just planning healing. That was very good for me. And the 7 days a week yoga twice a day. So what happened to me, I was fine, but at the same time, and then my children were calling because one is Washington, DC, one is Santa Barbara. They were worried about me because I'm alone. I said, don't worry, I'm fine. And then I'm the one who telling them what to do, what not to do. So those kind of things, I felt it was, and then somehow Zoom gave me, like I said, so much. I can't even explain how much, how many friends and all those things. But I was happy to help others who were very depressed, very down, anxiety attack, and loneliness, and lot of things are happening. So my day mostly after, and I was attending like 4 to 5 Zooms a day. Still, I was cooking and everything. I was fine. I never felt any loneliness or anything. But I was there for each and everybody. Sometimes I used to get exhausted after talking to them, so many people, but I was happy. Then I needed a me time. So then my me time is doing the gardening. So I plan my day such a way, so that way, and then, but because of all these kind of things and a lot of things, like I said, plus I changed my eating habits, like timing. I was eating at 8 o'clock. I started eating early. So eating early, sleeping early, waking up early, routinize, three things I adopted. It's, you just like routine, rhythm. So those kind of things, when you do that, then you just don't feel lonely or anything. So far, and I had a lot of helpers. Somebody will call me, do you want me to get that? Because I'm a senior, so senior group, they will call me, Pushpa, do you need any groceries or something or like that? So I did that, they did. So sometimes month and a half, I did not get out from the house. But only thing what I will say, I was more busier than before pandemic. So to me, and I should not say, I'm really, really happy and healthy, more healthy and happy, because I don't have to drive. I don't have to worry about the filling up the gas and all kind of things. But I'm really, really happy to help others. That's my whole motive was. I will call like 4 or 5 friends because I know, and I will ask them, what did you eat today? What did you cook? What are you doing? And I will kind of tell them, no, don't eat the junk and this and that. Oh, I just made the kheer and I ate the whole pot. I said, what? So all kind of things was happening. And then the plus thing I did, I created a Zoom. So we were having the twice a month lunch with group. So that way they felt like we are still in ICC. And then we will play games and everything. We'll do Antakshari. So every twice a month, we will do that. So then they said to me that you get us together as a group. That's what was my whole motive was, to help others who is they're alone, they're lonely, I'm the same way. Then they ask me, where do you get all the energy to do all those things? I say, you know what? I don't have to think what is next. It just automatically happens to me. So I am a big planner from the day one, like I grew up. So I always plan things without writing or anything, and I do A to Z everything. So to me, it was really, really, I'm happy that I could help others. So that's what it is. Thank you.
Wow. So such an inspirational group of people. I'm already feeling like I can relate to a few of you. And Pushpaji, I totally resonate with your philosophy. When we help others, like they say, when you fill other people's buckets, your bucket gets full. And that's what helps you to keep going. So thank you for sharing your amazing journey through the pandemic and what changes and what learnings we all had. So I'm going to switch gears and take you guys to the pre-pandemic time. I don't know if we even remember that. But Paras, could you go back to that time and tell us how did you kind of fulfill all your roles and responsibilities as a mom, as a wife, as a daughter, as a professional?
Sure, Lena, it does sound a long time ago, but I'd like to share 3 things with the audience and with you all. The first is I was introduced to meditation about 20 years ago, and I practiced meditation for 20 years, which has really helped me be grounded and be centered throughout. And I think that was one of the ways that I also, kind of focused on myself, so to speak, during the pandemic as well. So I continue to practice meditation even now. The second was to your point about creating the social support. And I was very involved in the elementary school of our children by doing volunteer work. So I volunteered from being a room parent to being a Girl Scout leader. So a lot of happy and fun memories. But for me, it was also connecting with the community, connecting with the other parents. And we've made lifelong friends, through that. And just that really kind of brought joy, and I really enjoyed doing that. So that's the second thing I wanted to share, being part of the community. And third was being working. Sometimes it's very stressful, not only at home, but kind of coordinating schedules and projects. So I always used to take wellness days off. So taking a day off just for myself, meeting up with a friend for lunch or for coffee, or sometimes just picking up a book and reading, or just going for a long walk. And I thought that really helped me de-stress and reset myself, even if it was for a day, to get back to where I wanted to focus on. So being able to do the meditation practice, being able to be involved in the community, and just taking the time for self-care were the three things that I did before, and I'm hoping that I can continue to do that now, as hopefully we will be past the pandemic soon.
Well, thank you. I think those sound like, you had a great balance of doing other things besides just focusing on your work. I think your point about taking a wellness day, being part of the community and help others or be part of the group. And of course, like the meditation, I cannot emphasize how helpful that is for everyone. So thank you, Paras. So Preeti, tell us about what factors do you play in a women's mental health? I know you're a superwoman yourself. You've gone through, different careers, and you've raised two amazing young adults, and now you are a CEO of a company. So tell me, how do you do that? What factors do you think play into it?
So, although the title of Superwoman may make us feel accomplished and powerful, and, I grew up as a tomboy because I didn't like people, the stigma of, oh, you're a girl, or they tell my parents, you have daughters, you don't have sons. I heard so much of that. So I resolved to do everything that boys would do. And most of my life, I was a tomboy and kept trying to, do that. But then over the years, I've realized that, instead of trying to be a superwoman, just being a woman is super, because we're endowed with certain qualities that come naturally to us. So I feel we need to use our feminine qualities of compassion and love and bring the family together and, sort of make them participate in the functioning of the household. We shouldn't try to hold on to the stigma, right? How do we release it and move on? And so that's something I would sometimes you run into people expecting you to do that, and you have to sort of work through that, but always motivating them in some way. Because what happens is that we often try to follow the cultural and traditional roles and responsibilities while also trying to be a full professional and do everything else, right? And you have high standards for yourself. So in both areas, you're creating stress. We also find it hard to say no, and then we take on more responsibilities. So what I've learned that instead of doing that, start being more vulnerable. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say no sometimes, but follow this thing that you might have learned, and I really like that from improv, is don't say no, say yes and. So, instead of saying, no, I can't do that, yes, I can do the cooking, but could you help me with the dishes? So yes and is like a very nice formula, which, brings people in. So that's one thing we can use from, just improv. It's kind of a fun thing and it engages everyone. And then I also realized that if you ask for help, it opens the doors for other people to ask you for help. If you try to say, no, I'm going to get it done myself and everything, then people think, well, can I really ask her because she's so busy? Or, so it creates some sort of boundaries and creates walls around you. The more vulnerable you are, the more vulnerable other people can be. And it makes it much stronger bonds. And then, like I said earlier, it's really important to sneak in some self-care routines. It could be just 5-10 minutes of exercise and stretching. It could be 5-10 minutes of yoga and meditation. And one very important thing is women work in circles. So it's always like, you saw from Pushpaji, from others, Paras connecting with friends. We need a circle of other, friends to reach out to them as and when needed so that they can reach out to us, keeping those doors open. And, typically that will help our well-being. And also, we also want to be very careful not to propagate the gender stereotypes that we may have grown up with. So I wanted to make sure, so I made sure my sons were, always involved. So we should involve our sons and daughters equally in all household chores as well as all external chores. So we need to say, okay, what did I like about things that I grew up with, and what did I not like? And we have to stop the cycle here instead of propagating it. So that's what I try to practice and sort of bring about in the community. And I think that's what's helpful to see and support other people that way.
Wow, lots of great pointers there. I certainly loved everything you said. I think self-compassion is a really good medicine for all of us. And of course, all the other points that you shared make total sense. So thank you for sharing that, Preeti. Over to you, Preet. Now, I'm giving you your professional hat back as a psychologist, as a mental health professional. What factors do you think play into women's health that, in your work you see? What is it that you would like to share?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that I see in working with South Asian women is in order to improve emotional wellness, allowing them to work on their voice in prioritizing themselves. And that may mean different things to different women. And it doesn't mean that you are going to say, okay, I'm not going to help anyone. I'm not going to do anything for anyone. And that oftentimes women will internalize that and say, well, I can't prioritize myself. That's how is my family going to function? How is my, how am I going to get things done? And so allowing them to say, okay, well, what does prioritizing yourself mean to you? And having them come up with that answer. And a lot of our work with South Asian women or South Asian community is you are all experts of your lives. We're just there to hold your hand and as providers and just help you through the journey so that you can be your better self, live the better life that you want to live. And so how do we help them have that voice? And so many of my colleagues here have mentioned that South Asian women carry and hold many roles and identities. And so how do we help them identify who they are individually? Yes, you're a mom. Yes, you're a daughter. Yes, you're a CEO of a company, but truly, what is your identity before any of that came about? And so how do we help them work through the self-sacrificing that they do and the suffering and silence that they do, and help them understand that they can build resilience to continue to do that? So how do we help them build the resilience, but also help them identify their own hopes and dreams and ways that they can, foster that individual identity in balance with what all those roles and other identities are. And so, as Preeti mentioned, self-compassion. And so how do we help them turn some of that selflessness that they show other folks? How do we help them turn that inwards, show themselves some of that compassion, help them identify, what are some supports outside of their family system? The friends that Preeti mentioned as well, and Baris mentioned, how do we help them find the support network outside of the family? Family is a huge support system. The culture, really fosters that, but we also need to have supports outside of the family that we can lean on when things get tough or hard. And then lastly, I was also going to mention, as Preeti mentions as well, is how do we model these things for our children? How do we help our children not see us do these things as self-sacrificing? And so I catch myself so often, even though, my mom and my parents, always told us, the gender roles, we would see my dad cook, we would see my mom cook. They modeled different things for us, but culturally that wasn't modeled to us. So I still catch myself sometimes being hard on myself because, I had to order food from outside instead of cooking a homemade meal, or the dishes kept left in the sink overnight. And then I have to remind myself, if I had hurt my arm, let's say I broke my arm and I had a cast on it, would I really go and wash the dishes? No. So if I'm feeling mentally, exhausted, I'm burned out, why am I going to go wash those dishes? I should treat that just as importantly as I would my physical health.
Great call out, Preet. So we have 4 questions. The first one from Saloni Kotari. I think she's a young woman going into the workforce. Reading her questions, I can kind of tell. She's asking, in the previous slide, there was a bar chart that showed that white people had higher rate of mental health issues than Asian people. Do you think that this difference is due to reporting avoidance? There tends to be a lot of shame surrounding mental health in Asian communities, and probably that's where the reporting avoidance. What do you think?
I'll share my perspective, and I obviously would love to hear Preet's as well. So you're right, Saloni. I think there's definitely a huge factor of that. As Asians, we are, there's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of shame in accepting, I have, stress, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm going through some panic attacks. And it's actually known that a lot of Asians present more with somatic symptoms or somatization. So I'm using a kind of a fancy medical term, but what it means is a lot of the times in Asian culture, especially, we see women coming to primary care physician's office with lots of other physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, back pain. And then, of course, they do the medical workup and nothing is pointing towards a medical reason for that. And stress and anxiety, depression tends to be what's driving that, because there's a huge mind-body connection. So a lot of that is how they, that's how they feel like that's a more acceptable way to get help.
As a researcher and wanting to research around South Asian mental health, what we face is that there isn't enough data out there. And so those numbers, on paper may look like, okay, well, we're not struggling as much, but we are not doing research on South Asian mental health. We're not, there's not disaggregated data. Even the Asian data probably doesn't include a lot of South Asian folks. And so being mindful that, and that's where the stigma continues, that these things don't happen in our communities. These are Western diseases. They're quote unquote white diseases. And so the importance is that we need to start breaking these stigmas so that we can do more research and people will come forward and want to talk about their stories and share what their experiences are.
Great. I think also culturally, I mean, South Asian folks probably have they tend to tolerate things much, and probably there's reporting avoidance. I don't know if there's any correlation to that. I'll go to the second question. This is from Sneha Vashisht, and this is addressed to Dr. Leena. The question is, my question to you is, many of us have faced a lot of hardships in our lives, and which has impacted our mental health. This increased twofold during COVID. So what can we do if they are worried about their mental health?
So what you are, sharing is very true. I would say we saw a lot more need for mental health care going up during the pandemic. And in my work, what I learned was a lot of these people were, if you wanted to kind of just take an analogy of like, you are getting a little flu-like illness before you develop something like pneumonia, right? So a lot of us were at this flu-like stage, maybe some body aches, maybe some fatigue. So that was like, oh, maybe some stress and anxiety. I'm feeling, pre-pandemic, I'm juggling all these roles and responsibilities. And then came the pandemic, which was a very unprecedented time. All of us were, boxed into our homes, and lack of social connection and all the wellness factors that come from interaction as human beings. That's such a big resilience building block. We didn't have those things, and they tipped over and kind of had more of proper presentation of an anxiety disorder or depression. And I think that was very very hard, and has been very hard for a lot of folks. And so I would say that taking inspiration from today's discussion, mental health issue is no different than any other physical health issue. Preet gave a great example of a broken bone, and would I like wash dishes if I had a crack in my bone? Similarly, I say like diabetes and depression. In diabetes, you have your one organ like pancreas, not secreting enough insulin. And in depression, we understand there are some neurochemicals or hormones like serotonin that are not in the right sync. And brain is another organ, pancreas is one organ, but for some reason, if we have, God forbid, diabetes, I will go happily to see my doctor, not worry about taking the medication or see the professional. But when it comes to mental health, I shy away from getting that help to see a counselor or a psychiatrist if need to go on medication. So I think there are a lot more avenues. I mean, especially here in the area we live, there are tons of resources to get mental health help. So I would encourage you, or whoever you're, talking about, if you have a friend or somebody you're concerned about, please encourage them to, they could start seeing just a therapist, and often just talking and building connect, just those insights into how there might be some things I can work on in terms of lifestyle changes, and reducing stress can be a huge way to alleviate a lot of these symptoms. It doesn't need to be medication always.
Great, great. Thank you, Dr. Reena. So another interesting question by Saloni Kothari, and she asks, what can fathers, husbands, and brothers do to support the mental health of their wives, sisters, and daughters at home? And I'm going to add a little bit onto that. What are we doing to educate the fathers, husbands, and brothers? How do they get that information? So who would answer that?
I can take an attempt because I live with all boys and men. But I think what we need to understand that it's not just us that we are going through. The boys and men are also going through mental health, mental stress, but they don't express it. So just because, our symptoms show out more easily because we are, our body systems, we don't have the testosterone or something to keep looking strong. But so I think being vulnerable with them and sharing with them so they'll be vulnerable with you, allowing them because to open up. It is mental health stress is experienced evenly throughout all. Somehow, we shouldn't say it's one-sided more than the other, but they have been traditionally taught not to show it. So they've learned how to dismiss it. And that's why often they suffer deeper, but we don't know. So keeping that in mind, the women should say that, I'm feeling all of this. Maybe they're also feeling this way. Can I reach out to them and share how I'm feeling and invite them to share, are you also feeling this way? Because then you can empathize with each other. At the same time, of course, making this awareness because, like social stigma, cultural, traditional roles, having a nice conversation and including them in how you're thinking and feeling. Because especially you can start bringing your children in first. As they're growing up, you can say, I'm exhausted, I'm sitting down, I need a little bit of a rest. So the children accept that, oh, moms, like when early on when they were teenagers, I told them, you know what, I need my energy, so I need to go meditate. So when I was meditating, even though they were hungry, tired, crying, they were little kids at that time, but they said, no, mom's meditating because they knew that after I did that, when I came back, I was more open, more energetic, and more able to handle their needs. So just setting up a system, creating a few simple boundaries, and also inviting them to understand how you're feeling and empathizing. I think that's really important.
That's a great answer. So then over to another question by Smriti. She says, over 2/3 of caregivers are women, caring for partners, parents, and children. While this brings comfort to many, managing competing paid and unpaid work demands can influence the physical and mental health. Having said that, how can women have a more balanced approach towards such situations?
I think work is work. We shouldn't say what is paid work or unpaid work because I'm doing a startup, and initially in startup there is no money, but I'm working harder than I've ever worked in my life before, right? But the passion is there because we are helping. And during the pandemic, it really helped because we felt we are doing something about the situation. We are creating solutions for mental health for students, and in fact, we added on creating for teachers and parents. So understanding that paid work or unpaid work, like again, that's another thing we need to help our family members understand that whether you help, cooking in the kitchen, you're providing nourishment so that these people are healthy and working. So we should not distinguish about paid work and unpaid work. Work is work. And that's another thing we need to train our children from a young age, that if you're busy and doing something, whether it's paid or not, is equally important. And how do we bring our children up feeling that way so that when they have their spouses, they're working in the world, they start understanding that, everything is important. And let's not judge by monetary value of things, because more than money, there's, like life situations are so much more important than money. So does that answer the question? I just want to make sure they feel that it answered what they were specifically aiming for. But we need to re-educate ourselves because we catch ourselves doing that too, right? Sometimes when I'm trying to decide between what to do, and this is paid and that's not paid. So we have to reprogram our own brains, our own minds to see how important is it in the overall big picture of life versus just, what is it going to do? And I understand in some situations, people have to work on the paid part, like it's not that everyone has the option. So whoever's doing that, but still respect the person who's doing something that's still not paid, but it has so much value.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Dr. Preeti, because many times the unpaid category is considered as if somebody's not doing much work, but that's not the case. Sometimes it's much more work that they do and juggle, which probably the paid category may not even realize. So I don't think anybody should even feel that they are not paid, and so probably they are worthless. No, that shouldn't be.
And I just want to interject, one more point, like as a homemaker, often a lot of the wives who are homemakers are not considered to be doing much, or they are not bringing in the money or whatever. The culturally, there is a different view about looking down upon them or not feeling like they are as important as somebody else who might be, has a working spouse. I think I have a lot of respect for homemakers. I mean, as a professional, of course, I am a mom and also like do my, take care of my home. But whenever I have, taken time off and focused more on just, housekeeping and taking care of home, you realize, oh my gosh, this work is a lot more work than the professional work often you do. So work is work, raising kids, keeping your house healthy and clean and whatnot. It is very important part of the life as well. And that does not need to be disregarded.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to go to the next question. This is from an anonymous attendee. How do you get a young adult who is disconnected from the family and friends to a therapist if they don't even want to talk about it? And this kind of also ties into the stigma of our South Asian community around mental health. But especially for young adults, how do we get them some help?
So, I mean, this could be young adult, this could be anyone that's not really ready to go see a therapist. We're in this midst of technology where we have lots of apps available on kids' phones. These are things that kids are connected to, and I'd love for Preeti to chime in as well, as because she is working with youngsters in terms of technology, and it's really important that we open up or model these things for our kids, is because they will engage in apps and they will engage in social media. So, having them follow someone that might be a psychologist or a provider on social media, sharing, say, hey, like I was reading some posts by this person and it might be helpful. Youth really jump on that opportunity to follow someone and hoping that they would follow them back, and so just trying to engage them in ways that they may want to start thinking about their emotional wellness or mental health without victimizing them, without pathologizing them, and telling them that there's something wrong with them. And so just encouraging them to reach out on their own, giving them the tools, hoping that they will reach out to something. But also, a way that we really encourage young adults to reach out for services is, and tell them that this is not, especially with psychologists, it might not be through their medical doctor, but reminding them that this is just a space for you to go to talk to someone that's not a part of your family, that's not a part of your support system, to get an outside perspective of whatever is going on for you. And maybe normalizing it by sharing that you may also be struggling in some ways, or if there's a family member that's sought out therapy, normalizing it and saying, this is okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to go talk to someone. We've also internalized this thought process of we shouldn't go talk to other people about our families. So really encouraging them and saying, it's okay, like if you have to discuss about our family or what's going on at home, and giving them that permission that they can do that. And that kind of takes away a lot of the stigma that, these are unsaid messages that just get passed on generation to generation. And so when we normalize it for them and tell them it's okay to ask for help, oftentimes they will jump on that opportunity, especially those that are maybe born and raised here. I've noticed that a lot of kids will reach out for mental health services at their school campuses, that being high school, that being, all the way down to elementary school. And even in college, they pay a health fee and they can reach out to their providers on their school campuses. and their parents won't find out. So that's that one piece, is like they're really worried that their parents are going to find out what they're talking about, what's wrong. And so there we will have to do a little bit of education, and sometimes parents are not willing to do that because they do want to know what's going on with their child. But just letting, confidentiality is huge within our profession, and just letting them know that this is a confidential space. We will not find out what's going on, but we really are worried about you and we want you to go and talk to someone.
Yeah, and since you invited me to chime in, I'm going to add a couple of words into that. The word I picked up was disconnected. So if they're feeling disconnected from the family, it's really hard to be telling them anything at all. So I think the first step would be, how do we connect them? So I would say initially, because I do some life coaching as well, and many adults, parents who come to me, professionals, they're often disconnected with their, especially young adult children. First thing is just to connect. So I say, just send them some jokes, send them something that softens them up. I'll say every few days, just send them some funny video or send them a joke, something. So you're starting to form that connection, and then try to reach out to their friend circle or other people who might know them and invite them sort of like to engage with you so you can learn about, because disconnected could be at different levels. Sometimes children have realized we don't want to talk to them because we don't understand, there's various levels. So I think the first thing is just being that vulnerable and saying, I just want to say hi to you. I don't even care about my mental, nothing to share. It's just, how do I just connect? Send something that will engage them. And over time, it'll soften them up, because constantly if you're sending them something that's of interest to them, nothing related to mental health, but just some funny thing or some interesting talk, whatever you can. So first, reach out and try to connect to them. Once you're connected, it'll open up the doors for you to make those kind of conversations, make suggestions, send them specific things. But please just, reach out, connect in some simple way. Just find some way to, spend time with them or let them know that you care. And it may take a long time for them to sort of open up and reply back to you. But if they don't respond right away, don't take it personally. Just your side, do your giving, right? Just keep doing your giving.
Yeah. Good point. I think Preet and Preeti, both of you kind of said two different sides of the same, how do we tackle it? One, I also feel, is seeing the sign or observe the sign. Sometimes you are disconnected or you don't have probably connection with your family or friends, but you observe the signs. And once you observe the signs, as Preeti said, maybe try to find some hook to engage with them. And what I liked what Preet said was, normalize it. That's very key, because a lot of people or kids or adults don't come up and come forward is because they feel they are the only ones impacted or feeling that way. So normalizing that is very, very important. So I
Jayashree, I
hope.
just want to add one more quick point. I think I totally agree with Preet and Preeti's inputs, but the other thing is to model it. It kind of goes in that category of normalizing it, of course. But, if I am, myself, talking about my experience of I'm seeing somebody right now because I'm trying to, work on this conflict, or I'm feeling like stressed, then even that can help, because, we are huge, big role models for our kids. So if they see us doing that, that also helps them feel like this is something I can do.
Great. So there was one question actually that moved into the answered section, but I didn't ask that question. And it's interesting from, I would say, that workplace perspective. This is a question from Saloni Kothari. She's saying, is the stigmatization of female health in Indian households translated into the tech industry, where men are the majority? Is it hard for advocacy about female health to be taken seriously in male-dominated workplace? And again, I'm assuming Saloni is kind of entering into a work environment, and probably these are some of the questions that have come to her mind. So anybody who is in the tech industry, male dominated, or do you feel that we do have a space equally in the male dominated industry?
Yeah, so Jayashree, I can address that question. I think the question is right on. But specifically in the tech industry, I would say a lot of companies are now prioritizing mental health. They are talking very openly about it. They are providing resources not only to the employees, but to the families as well. And I feel, working for a big tech company, I have the resources. I feel, comfortable talking about mental health. There's also opportunities to take time off if you need that, or if you need to speak with, any of the other coworkers that you work with. It's not something that's kind of, looked down upon or frowned. I think that the tech companies are very open to talking about it, and specifically also men. The men are majority in the tech companies, but I think in the South Asian, men community as well, they are open to talking about it. They are doing webinars. They are kind of bringing this topic, front to, and having discussions around everybody. So I think it's changing. I'm not sure if it's happening at each of the tech companies, but it's definitely changing. And I think that companies are prioritizing mental health around this.
Yes. And I can definitely say it is changing, and depending on what kind of probably company that you are at, there's a lot of education that is imparted also in these companies, and awareness. And so slowly the landscape is changing. So um, young, new folks who are coming into the workforce, I think you also have a big part in educating and changing the landscape there. So I'm going to take the last question before we can wrap up at 7:15. This question is from Shirisha Nagula. She's saying that it was a great session. Thank you for your valuable inputs. How do we streamline the mental health education among the family if they are in different stages of their life, achieving their goals with quite different age group siblings and other family members to be in the same page of understanding? Sometimes mental health needs to be considered with different age groups, and I feel that I feel as understanding perspective level have some difference based on the experience. So I believe what Shirisha is saying is, if you have somebody in a family with different age groups, different stages of their life, achieving different goals, how do we strike a balance?
I was in the tech industry, but I did a lot of research initially and connecting with actually students, children's parents, and adults of all ages. It is true that the needs are different and the way they see things are different. But if we find something that's a unifying factor in the family, like we'll just say, okay, everyone just come and do some stretching together. So we do something that doesn't impact, everyone can do together. Or maybe you find some nice music to listen to together. Like, and just pick 10 minutes in a week, some once in a while, or like a meditation or a relaxation routine. And in fact, in our app, that's what we're providing to parents so that they can meaningfully connect with their children without stepping into their privacy or boundaries. Like, hey, let's all just sit down and listen to this 3-minute thing together. Especially when you notice you've had an argument with a child or a grandparent or it happens all the time. Any friction has happened, then invite them not into a discussion or solving the problem, but invite them just to sit with you, just in company. And slowly, these things, somatically, some of them we release it through our body. A lot of the grief and pain is held inside our body. We need to understand that, and we can't think away all our problems like I tried to do much earlier, but over life, you realize. So I feel like making some routine, maybe if it's just once a week. What we used to do with my young kids is, okay, we're going to do this yoga and put on a video, and everyone just try to do this together of all age groups. So pick an activity that you can all do regardless of age group to the ability that they can. That would be something to unify everyone and prioritize that and tell them that our physical health is important, but our mental health is equally important. So we need to do for both. Don't just focus on your physical health. Let's take some time for our mental health.
I think self-care in the form of taking care of our mind, but not just body, is an important aspect to instill from early age on in our children. As a child psychiatrist and kind of sharing a little bit of that developmental perspective here, I think one of the things maybe you're, seeing with your kids is that they are at different stages. One might be in elementary school, other might be in a middle, and some might be, almost a young adult. And so clearly, as they are in different stages of their lives, their needs or emotional needs or social emotional needs kind of change. So of course, the basic building blocks are the family connection, spending one-on-one quality time with your child, whichever way, that is perfect for that particular stage of life. So for a younger kid, you might sit and do an art project. For a middle schooler, you might go for a walk or go on a bike ride. for a high schooler, you might go and get your nails done together. I don't know, like there could be fun activities you can do. So connection is very, big predictor of compliance, and teaching skills is what, I think what was Preeti was saying earlier too. But also, since we have such rich material now on the internet, about also learning about what your child's needs are at this stage of life, and trying to kind of weave in things around that. For a teen, doing stuff with their peer seems to be of a lot of value. And so that could be a way to, get them connected and do an activity that could help others too. So I think that could be also a way to kind of think about this broadly.
Great. And I'm going to pick up on that word, Lena. As you said, connected. I would like all our attendees to be connected with us. That's our goal, that we would like to educate, inspire, empower, and impact the wellness segment. And I hope the attendees found value in what we talked and what we discussed. I was very happy to see the level of engagement. We went 20 minutes over, and I still see most of the attendees on the call. I'm going to just acknowledge a few folks. I was surprised to see some of our old timers, donors, co-founders on the call. So Naren Bakshi, CWC co-founder, he's also on the call. We have Dr. Padma Srinivasan, CWC doctor patron, she's on the call. Sneha Vashisht, CWC India and clinical psychologist, and Smriti Meghwal, CWC India and social work professional. So thank you for joining.